It's time now for the Sports Objective Podcast. No talking heads, just guys who love sports. Here's Dave Richmond.
Welcome into the Sports Objective Podcast. We have a very special podcast because we have Kyle from LaGrange on. How are you, sir?
I'm very special tonight, Dave. I'm very, very special.
Yeah, you're precious, too. How are you, Bubba Rosenbaum?
Doing great, guys. Hope you are.
We're very excited because we'll have our preview for Pirates and UCF. It's game week, but we have kind of like an early basketball preview for college basketball, and very excited about it.
Yeah, we do. Here recently, we caught up with Cy Seymour. We had that episode a few shows ago, so definitely go back and check that out. But on this episode, we're catching up with Kim McNeill, the first-year head coach of the women's basketball program at East Carolina, and then we'll also catch up with Michael DeCourcy of the Sporting News, and he's also a studio analyst for the Big Ten Network. And so we'll get his thoughts on East Carolina, the American, the ACC, and also the national picture.
Hey, Bubba, what's the name of that punk-ass guy from NBC Sports Network?
Oh
gosh.
Yeah, hold on. Give me a moment, and I'll be able to tell you.
All right, well, we'll come back to that, but yeah.
Let's talk about
we need to have
Media Day. The Pirates picked 11th out of 12. I don't think there was any surprise there, guys. It's Joe Dooley's staff working really hard to revamp the program. Tulane was the cellar dweller, if you will, but pretty much very fair, I think, considering the program's only got a couple conference wins last year, the last couple of seasons. So it looks like with the Pirates, we're going to get a chance to redeem ourselves, redemption, and I think with what we had with and you had 11 great players, you could be finishing 6th or 7th by the end of the year. Who knows? I don't think, obviously, it won't be the top, but I don't think it'll be 11th or 12th.
No, and I think what you said, the pick is fair. We have so many unknowns. There's a lot of talent. Right. You know, if you go back and listen to Cy, he says the most talented team. You know, he's seen here in 21 years. So right. I think the potential's there. I don't think we'll finish 11th. Who knows? We could, but I don't know. 6th, I doubt that too. 7th or 8th, that's kind of what I'm shooting for.
Yeah.
7th, and you say, well, 7th or 8th isn't that good. In this conference, if you finish 7th or 8th and you do well in your non-conference, that's potential for postseason play, CBI, NIT.
That's what I'm hoping for, is to see some kind of post. That's my goal this year, is obviously like to get to the big dance, but definitely like to get to some postseason tournament, but beyond the conference tournament.
Absolutely.
Yeah, CBI is very realistic.
And the gentleman you were referring to, the NBC college basketball analyst, and I saw him on the AAC Media Day yesterday being Monday. That's what it was. Rob Douster, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. But anyway, he had a podcast previewing the American, and needless to say, he put zero time and effort into talking about the Pirates, and he just said, if you think a turnaround is going to happen under Joe Dooley, he said, literally what I have written down on my paper is LOL, LOL, LOL. And then he went on to say, my prediction is I don't give a single F about the Pirates. So,
and he didn't say F, he used the word.
Yeah.
That he doesn't care, he doesn't give a fudge about the Pirates. And this is a man who's employed by NBC. He's a writer for him, covers college basketball, and says it's on his podcast, which you can find on NBC Sports website. So it ain't just like some bootleg podcast. NBC Sports, it's available there. And he had the nerve to say that. I wish Joe Dooley would have punched him right in his mouth. I think he's a punk-ass bitch. And somebody needs to link him to this podcast, because he needs to come on up here and talk to me.
He said he would come on the show, didn't he, Bob?
Well, you tell him to come go one-on-one with the great one. And see how much trash he can talk. We'll just have a talk. We'll just have a trash talking session and see who wins that. He's a Yankee prick, and
different guy.
I want him. Bring him on. I want to talk to him.
I hear Kyle.
I'm calling you out, bitch. Come on.
I hear you right now. I hear Kyle right now. It's like a little kid on the playground. Your mama.
Oh, I'm calling him out. He's a bitch. And I'll leave it there because I want to say a lot more. But.
Now, Dave, I had not invited him on the show. a little bit more of a kill 'em with kindness approach than what Kyle just referenced. But what I did, I went on to the Sports OBJ Twitter account, and I invited them to come on down for the UConn game, because UConn was his favorite team growing up, he said. So I told him the Pirates play UConn at Williams Arena, Minges Coliseum, I guess late February. So come on and check that out.
Did
and
I think
Kyle's going to be the big dude in the parking lot. Waiting for you.
I said, I think you'll be very surprised at the product you see on the court and also the atmosphere.
Did he respond to you, Bubba?
He did not.
No, he's a bitch.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, we'll get him on. We'll get him on. One of these days we'll get him on, because I can tell you right now, as somebody that loves basketball, Pirate basketball, I'm not going to, and not only that, but it's talking trash about East Carolina. That's like talking bad about your mama or family. And
no, it's the way he did it. It's the way he did it. It was classless, just like I'm being classless. But that's okay, because people say don't go to their level. I'll go below their level. You want to be dirty and trashy? I'll get down in the streets with you if you want to, or in the mud, however you want to do it. So, it was classless. For him to do an American preview and go LOL, I don't give a FUCK about East Carolina, was classless. So, to me, you treat people like you want to be treated. He wants to treat us with no class, and then therefore, in my opinion, he must want us to treat him with no class. And I got no problem with that. Speaking of class, let's go to somebody with some class. The lovely and talented head coach of the Lady Pirates, Kim McNeill.
Hard to believe it's basketball season, as both the Lady and Men Pirates actually started at the end of September with practice. And right now with us, first-year head coach Kim McNeill. Coach, welcome back to the show.
Great. Thank you guys for having me again.
Absolutely. Wanted to have you back on, and very excited about the season. I'm a big basketball fan. I make no secrets about that, and both men's and women's love it, and just want to get your take on I know basketball practice starting the end of September. How are things going?
It's been really good. The energy is great. I think we're it's like a bunch of freshmen out there right now, though, because, nobody knows our system. And so everybody's learning together as a unit. And because of that, it's like a roller coaster ride right now because it's so new to everybody. So right now we're just searching for consistency. We'll have one good practice and then one mediocre and then one good one. So it's, it's just like a roller coaster ride. But, the kids are bought in. They're ready to learn. And it's just about them feeling confident in the new system.
Yes, it is. Very excited to have you guys in Greenville. I know that, have you had a chance to even enjoy Greenville so far? I know you've had recruiting going on, a nice class we talked about last time. And have you and Corey and your kids, have you all had a chance to enjoy Greenville so far?
We actually have a little bit, being able to go out and support Coach Houston and what he's doing with the football program, I think is unbelievable. So we've had the opportunity to be at every home game. And, we're a sports family, so we love that there's constantly something to do and something to take our kids to. And just the community has been so welcoming to us and our family everywhere we go. It's been awesome.
Let's talk about a little bit about personnel. The one player that comes to mind, I love her game, was LaShonda Monk. You were the very first time we had you on, you talked about the exciting brand of basketball you bring to the court. I know you've got to love having her and a lot of great ladies on the team that I know they're going to fit in well with your system.
It does. LaShonda probably fits our style to the T. Her and Raven Johnson, fit us completely. But the thing that I'm, so excited about with LaShonda is just her growth and her maturity, both on and off the court. Just the way she's, carrying herself with, a lot more confidence now and being more vocal in practice. And so, yeah, she's working hard, and she definitely fits us on both ends of the floor with her quickness and already sitting, wanting to play defense and being a little gnat on the ball. So she definitely fits us.
Well, that's one thing I know is coaching basketball myself, high school level. I always taught my kids to, one thing was know their role. You can't have a center dribbling the basketball when it's a point guard. And also the defense wins championships. I know that you've done very well. How are things, do you think the ladies are buying in? And I know that even though you might have a tough night on the offensive side of the ball, the court, if you will, the defensive side is always something you can play hard.
And, we preach that every single day. That's who we are. That's our identity. I'm a huge believer in the young ladies understanding and knowing who we are. And so we make that a big emphasis, on the defensive end of the ball, just getting after it, causing havoc, turning people over, and then being able to get out and transition and finish. So I think at this point they've realized that. Our practices are very up-tempo. We don't sit in the half court a lot. So we preach being in shape and being able to fight through a little adversity and a little bit of fatigue. But I think they're figuring that out very quickly, that that's going to be who we are, and that's going to be our main front is our defensive mindset.
Well, I know, Coach, when you were in the American East Conference at Hartford, you had 3 winning seasons and 2 back-to-back consecutive American East Conference championship game appearances. And I know last year, as a matter of fact, that you lost in the first round, unfortunately, the women's NIT last year to Providence. But that speaks highly about your system, and certainly with I was thinking about this before we came on with you, the fact that we had a winning season last year, and with your style of play, there's no reason that I know that we want to temper the emotions and for people the expectations, but certainly it feels good about this year.
Yeah, it does, and what the team went through and all the adversity they went through, and to be able to, come out with a winning season obviously definitely helps. The situation that we're walking into kind of reminds me a little bit of Hartford. It took time, to get the kids to believe in, but, I think this team here is a little bit used to playing up-tempo versus the team at Hartford wasn't, so that they're used to the running and getting up and down the floor. But the way we play, it's not easy. We switch defenses a lot. And so we've really been emphasizing communication, like communicating to each other, talking to each other, playing with a lot of energy, because we play a high-risk, high-reward style of play. And if you don't bring the energy, then, you could get, that turnaround could change really, really quick and not in your favor. So, we're looking forward, to a good year. Sometimes it just takes time to get used to the system. But one thing I will say is that we will play hard every single night. You will see a fun style of basketball. You'll see a team that's going to play together and be happy for each other's success. And we'll just continue to go up from there.
Coach, I wanted to ask you, as far as recruiting is concerned, I know you have a great class coming in, but a generic question about recruiting. North Carolina is known for men's and women's basketball in the state of North Carolina. Does that make it easier or harder to recruit the state? I know you're going to recruit more than just North Carolina, but as far as the home base of North Carolina, is that tougher because basketball, there's so much talent here?
Because when you think about North Carolina, when you think about, this region, you think ACC. Obviously, I
Right.
grew up in it. I grew up in Virginia. And so everybody wants to play, ACC. And so now, that's NC State, Duke, Carolina. So right now what we're trying to do is just get people to realize that there is more out there than just those 3 among Wake Forest. And so, a lot of people still in North Carolina don't know a lot about East Carolina and haven't been on campus. But I can tell you this, once we get them on campus, they're blown away. Our facilities, our campus, our support from our community, they just don't realize what's all here. So, now we're just working on getting people here and getting people to understand what East Carolina has to offer from an athletic standpoint.
And, Coach, I know that it's hard to believe that November 6th is your first game against Middle Tennessee. I call it a matinee at 11 a.m., I guess an unusual time. But has it sunk in yet that you're getting ready to coach your first game at East Carolina?
No, it hasn't, because I just like to focus on, one day at a time and what's right in front of us right now. And what's in front of us is today's practice today, and that's what we'll focus on. I try to stay in the moment and not look too far ahead. I haven't really even looked at conference and how the league plays because we're just so focused on East Carolina and getting in our system. And so, before you know it, it's going to be here. I know it is going to move very, very quickly. I wish we had a little bit more time, to prepare, but we'll be ready to put a very good product out on the floor on November the 6th.
No doubt about it. It's a coach from coach to coach that it seems like you never have enough time, right?
Nope.
To prepare. And no doubt about it. And folks, I want to remind folks too that coming up Friday, November 8th, if you can't make the Wednesday matinee at 11 a.m., the season opener against Middle Tennessee, you also have a home game with That will be South Carolina USC Upstate at 7 p.m. So we'll try to get a lot of fans out there. I know it's going to be a big night for you.
It will, and we actually open up our first 4 games at home. So
right.
November we play at home a lot. We don't play at home as much in December, but the November 6th game is an education game where we get out. We have about 7,000 or 8,000 kids in the gym screaming. That's why I said 11 o'clock, and it's a fun day, a great environment for the team to play in, and a great day for the students to get out and really, see East Carolina at its best. But that November 8th game, as you said, I think is our true opener, for our fans, because a lot of people are working at 11. So, we're hoping that we can fill the Minjies up on November the 8th as well, to get the excitement going for the season.
Coach, we were talking earlier before we let you go. We were talking earlier about places and being here in Greenville. Have you and the family had a chance to go out there, certain places you like to eat that maybe you've had fun so far going to?
For Corey and I think everywhere we've been has been really, really good. I would say for my twins, Gabrielle and Caden, they love melon mushrooms. That's their favorite place to eat. Every time we ask them, where they want to go out to eat, that's the first place that they name. So, but, like I said before, everybody in Greenville has been great, welcoming to my family. So, I can't say that Corey and I have a favorite place to eat yet.
Well, Coach, we're looking forward to the season. I know that I want to remind fans, by the way, before I forget, to call 1-800-ECU or ECUPirates.com. Get your women's basketball season tickets like me. I want to try to get to as many games as I can, Coach, this year. And I appreciate your inspiration for the program and the team. We really love, I can tell the style of play you talk about is definitely right up my alley. And hopefully that Pirate fans will come out in droves and help you build this program.
We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to the season, and we're looking forward to Minji's being packed and loud and exciting for the team this year.
Thank you so much for coming on, Coach. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, and go Pirates.
Thank you very much, Coach McNeill. Looking forward to that. And I think Kyle and I are going to be the dudes in the front row yelling really loud for our Lady Pirates, LaShonda Monk. And I'm very excited about her style of play, Kyle. I think it's going to be very exciting to watch it in Williams Arena. And hopefully you can join me, you and Bubba can join me for at least one game this year. Yeah, it should be fun. Hopefully Lady Pirates will improve on last year. We haven't, last year really, considering what the girls went through. Oh, my God, 3 different coaches. Yeah, you really can't say that it I kind of, I wonder if I don't know what happened with Heather exactly and the staff, but you kind of wonder if things would have stayed together last year, what kind of season we would have had. So I think she's got some players to work with if they buy in. So hopefully she'll have some success in year one. And wouldn't that be something if both the ladies and the men were competing for postseason play? Yeah, and, last year her team actually made it to, as I talked about, Hartford, they actually made it to the women's NIT, the WNIT. Wow, they lost in the first round, but, they made it to postseason play. So it's not like she's a stranger to postseason play. She had, while she was there, didn't they go to how many times? They went to the postseason a couple of times while she was there. Yeah, and they went there twice to the WNIT. To their conference, American East, I think it's American East Conference, the conference tournament finals 2 years in a row that they finished second. But, we'll take it. I mean, we take that right now. The women's program and the men's program have futures that are very bright, and I think that certainly with the coaches, with the recruiting, just everything, men's and women's basketball is definitely in good shape with the coaches we have for sure. Speaking of basketball, one of the greatest as far as columnists, he does everything. He's a columnist for the Sporting News for 20 years. He's actually in the Sports Writers Hall of Fame, college basketball, as he should be. He's also a studio analyst for the Big Ten Network for college basketball. Let's go now to Mike DeCourcy. Well, hard to believe that basketball practice has started, Bubba, and it looks like in just a few weeks we'll have the first set of games starting for college basketball.
Absolutely. Very excited now to take a look at college hoops. I'm very excited to welcome to the show Michael DeCourcy from the Sporting News. Mike, welcome in.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, Mike, as you know, last time we had you on, we're obviously, I can personally say I'm a huge basketball fan, especially college basketball, and it's hard to believe the season's almost here.
Yeah, honestly, we had media day for the Big Ten Conference. One of my gigs is I do studio analysis for the Big Ten Network, so I always make it a point to be at Big Ten Media Day, and this year it was on October 2nd. So that shows you how fast we're going. And then the season itself has been advanced to start on November 5th with a pretty huge slate of games, including the Champions Classic with Michigan State, Kansas, Duke, and Kentucky. And all four of those teams, I mean, there will be some polls that might have them 1, 2, 3, and 4 in some order. It shows how really strong that field is this year, but that's not the only collection of great games on that first day. It's going to be a really exciting start to the 2019-20 season.
Very excited. In fact, we're very excited starting out, Mike, with, as you know, we're following the program, not program, I should say, the basketball very closely. We're very excited to have 11 new players. Hard to believe. It's almost like having an NBA team. 11 new players have to learn all about them, the stats, and we're having to scramble around. Bubba's like, that's normally his gig as the stats guy, but we're having to learn all about him. Only 2 returning guys coming back from last year's team with Joe Dooley at East Carolina.
Yeah, I think that there was likely to be some turnover. If you want to get to where you need to go in the league, there was going to be some turnover. It really is difficult when it is all at one time to bring in an entirely new group. But at the same time, it also gives you the opportunity to start to create a culture that can be successful. A number of freshmen that they have some confidence in. You still have Jaden Gardner, who showed last year that he was a very capable, talented guy. And it's going to be interesting to watch Joe and his staff build because it's been a challenge for East Carolina over the years because with the nature of their athletic program being a football first in many ways and occasionally changing leagues or having the league change around them because of that. It's been hard for basketball to get footing, but I think that now they're in a league that is very stable, but also very powerful in basketball. So they know what the challenge is. They know where they stand, and they've hired somebody that I think is very capable and has the ability to transform the program into a winner.
One of the things I guess you could liken it to, I guess on a smaller level is, I say smaller level, but in terms of numbers, is what USF did under Brian Gregory. I know they had some tremendous turnover between years 1 and 2 of his tenure. Yeah,
and BG did a very nice job and were very competitive last year. But I think that what you want to do as much as anything is you want to look internally. The one problem that East Carolina has made, the one mistake that East Carolina has made and the problem it's created for itself is that as it has constantly sort of, jumped between horses in terms of its leagues, it's also jumped between coaches. I know they gave Jeff Lebo a pretty good run, and that was sort of a step away from what they'd done at times prior to that. Jeff never was able to quite traverse the difference between the leagues when he got to the American. It was really difficult for him to get footing in this league. But Joe comes in clean in terms of knowing exactly what the landscape is. He knows who Cincinnati is now, although obviously they've changed their coach. He knows who Houston is. He knows who Memphis is, and that's going to be a real challenge as they upgrade their talent level. He knows what the Florida schools are like, so he knows what he has to put on the floor in order to be competitive. And I think that that's an advantage that East Carolina hasn't had in a very long time. And Joe's proven, his first go around at ECU, at Kansas as a right-hand man to Bill Self, and then of course at Florida Gulf Coast, he's proven that he knows how to look at the league that he's in and see who he needs, what he needs, and be able to put it on the floor and coach him up to win. And so now we'll see, him try to do that. And I think the important thing for ECU is to grow at their own pace, whatever that pace is. If it happens to be as quickly as USF was a year ago, great. But if it's not to get impatient.
And I wanted to ask you, Mike, as far as staying in the American, the home conference of East Carolina, I wanted to ask you, I've been reading a lot of stuff over the last few days knowing you were going to come on. How good is this Memphis team? There's a lot of people with headlines like, can Memphis live up to the hype and stuff like that? Do you think they can live up to the hype?
Well, I think that's going to be an interesting challenge. One, you're talking about someone who, in Penny Hardaway, has only a year of head coaching experience at the Division I level. And so he's now being asked to put on the floor a group of 4 or 5 freshmen at a time and win against more experienced teams than his. Now, they're going to be more talented than pretty much every other team in the league, and I haven't studied their schedule. I don't know that it would be a reach to say that they'll be more talented than almost everyone they face, if not everyone they face. James Wiseman is an amazing talent. 7'1", runs like a little bit like Chris Bosh, only probably taller and even stronger than Bosh at the same age. It has that kind of dynamism, so that's kind of a good comparison for you. But he's got Memphis is a different program. It's a different challenge than a lot. If you're not playing there, if you're not playing a lot, and you're from the city, and a lot of their guys are, including a lot of the guys who may be displaced for these freshmen, you can get a lot of heat from your family, your community, the people that you played ball with when you were younger. I've seen that consume some very good players and some very good teams, and I wonder how that will go when maybe some of their some of their sophomore players who were there a year ago and played okay, and now all of a sudden there's a freshman playing instead of them. How's that going to go? That's something that Penny has to deal with. That is a little bit different than every other program in the country. I know this because I lived there for 4 years and I covered the team for 4 years, so I know what Memphis basketball can be like the downside of Memphis basketball. All that talent that grows up in the city, that's great. But every player who grows up in the city and wants to play for the Tigers not only wants to be on the Tigers, but wants to be the Tigers' star. I mean, I shouldn't say every player, but a significant majority.
Mike, as you take a look at the American, it's a league that has tremendous depth. A year ago, 4 teams made the big dance, which ranked 5th among the conferences in terms of number of teams in the dance. And then you take a look at what Kelvin Sampson's done down at Houston. You obviously have John Brandon did an excellent job at NKU. He's taking over for Mick Cronin, who moved on to UCLA. You had Temple. They have a coaching change with alum Aaron McKee taking over for Fran Dunphy. And then what Johnny Dawkins done down at UCF, and they lost an awful lot off of that team. And then I had him mention a team like Wichita State and Greg Marshall, who really turned it around after starting slow a year ago.
Yeah, it's going to be a highly competitive league again, and I could see them getting 4 or 5 bids. It's a long way off, obviously, but the talent and coaching are there to support that kind of performance, and now they have to obviously do it on the floor. I mean, Cincinnati should still be in the picture for a tournament bid. They lost a fair number of players in addition to Mick leaving. They lost some guys who could have helped them this year in the transition, but they still do have Jaron Cumberland. They recruited well relative to the spring. It's not easy to bring in a lot of contributing players at that point in the year when John was hired to be the coach, but he managed to get Jaron's brother and a couple of freshmen who might be able to help them. We already talked about Memphis, and so and I expect UConn to be better. Although they've lost some players, I think as Danny Hurley, who I think is a magnificent coach, I think that they'll continue to get better. So it's kind of on Memphis a little bit. If there's going to be a team similar to what Houston was on a national level last year, I think it's kind of on Memphis to be that. But even if Memphis is not a top 10 Sweet 16 type team, I think there's still going to be 5-6 teams in the league that we'll be talking about in January and February as trying to fight for the tournament.
Mike, one of the questions I have, and you're an expert, and I'm not. I love the game and a student of the game for many years. I wanted to ask you your opinion on the American as far as a league. Do you think, I know that you don't make the decisions, but do you think that's a power league? I hate to use that term, Power 5, but it just seems like that with all from top to bottom, it just seems like that the American is getting better and better every year.
Well, it's not a Power 5 league. The money that exists, even in the least financially successful Power 5 league, dwarfs what is available to teams in the American. In the American, a lot of the teams in the league struggle to find the money. I mean, they find it, but they struggle to find the money to remain competitive, especially in football, but as well in basketball with the leagues that are power leagues. But as you saw in the Big Ten 2018, even if you are a power league, your teams cannot get it done on the floor. I think that year in 2018, although Michigan made it all the way to the championship game, I think they only had 4 bids that year out of 14 teams. So being in a power league doesn't guarantee you anything other than you getting paid. You still have to do it on the floor. And especially in the sport of basketball, I think we've seen that very much it's not a Power 5 in terms of performance. It's more like a solid 7. You have the Big East, you have the American, you have the other 5, the rich leagues. I think they're going to be in some order most years, and most of the time, the American is going to be at 5, 6, or 7, but it's still a significant difference for the American between them and whoever is number 8, whether it's the Valley or the Mountain West or the WCC or whomever.
Mike, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to make a quick point. And obviously, one of the ways to be a power league, you have to, in order to be the best, you have to be the best. Be the best, you have to be the best, right?
Yeah, well, there's no question. I mean, it all comes down to what you do in non-conference play. I mean, that's everything for every league, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, a couple of years ago, Alabama made the college football playoff without a significant win. Why? Because they were Alabama. That doesn't really happen in this game. I mean, you make it in the tournament because you're Duke and you won 23 games, but you're not going to get in there without having a resume that warrants it. We've seen too many powerful schools. Syracuse has been left out on occasion, for instance. One of the really big brand names in college basketball. You're going to get into the tournament if you earn it, and that all comes back to whether or not your league does well outside the conference. I always compare it to like the foreign exchange currency. A dollar is worth such and such relative to a euro, relative to the British pound, etc. And the way a league establishes the value of its currency is in non-conference competition mostly before league play begins. What do you do in Maui? What do you do in the Bahamas? What do you do in a home and home? What do you do in the Champions Classic? All that stuff, sort of factors in to what your league win is worth. And if you do great, if your league wins 85% of its games against and a lot against other major opponents outside the league, then okay. So now when you go out in your league and you go 13-5, it means something. In 2018, as I mentioned, with the Big Ten, they did not do well outside the league that year. So Nebraska legit went 13-5 in the league and didn't make the tournament. So it shows that it's not about the brand name of your league. It's about whether or not you individually and your league collectively gets it done to help you get in the show.
Mike, very quickly before we move on and talk about the ACC, that's what Tulane made a tremendous hire, in my opinion, with Ron Hunter. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they did, but I also, if Ron can get that going, then he should be on the contender list for every Coach of the Year award. I've been to to Tulane. I wrote a column back in, I guess, was it 2013, 2012, whenever it was that the American announced they were adding Tulane to their league, and I said, I knew right then that the Big East. It was not the American yet; it was still the Big East, and I knew then that the Big East, we knew it was over, because I knew that the Catholic schools, the private schools that had been members of the Big East when they were members of Conference USA when they were in business with Tulane, knew that was not a program they wanted to continue to do business with. Tulane has rarely, if ever, invested at the level necessary to support high-end, high-major athletics. And it's okay. I mean, it's a great university, and they've had some really significant obstacles. Katrina in 2005 certainly. I mean, I had a friend, Dave Dickerson, who left Maryland to become head coach there, and that happened like his first month on the job or whatever. Real opportunity to begin coaching his team, and then that happened. So there have been obstacles, but if you don't want to compete at that level, then find a level where you can compete. Tulane has never done that. Maybe Ron changes that. I think he's a wonderful coach. He was great at Georgia State. He was great here in Indianapolis at IUPUI. So I hope it works out great for him. He's a really good man. I mean, a really good man and a terrific coach. So I hope it works out. But I don't have a strong belief in the ability of Tulane to sustain success at this level.
Let's move on now to the ACC. Mike, I saw where in the ACC basketball operations in Charlotte they picked, I believe, Duke to win. I know you don't have the Zion mania. How good a team is Duke? Obviously, you know who the coach is in the 40th year of his existence there in Durham. How good do you think Duke will be this year?
It's a very interesting team because although they bring in some very fine freshmen, I mean, they don't bring in the dominant, overwhelming freshmen that they had the last, in last year or even the year before when they brought in Marvin Bagley. I think that Vernon Carey is a really, really good basketball player, and he's going to be a fine freshman. And I love Matthew Hurt. I think kind of an almost underrated to me. I really think he can be terrific. Although I do wonder if you look at the Duke roster and you rank their players 1 through 12 or whatever in terms of ability and what you expect them to, how you expect them to perform based on their talent. 3 of the first 4 guys would be Carey, Hurt, and Javin DeLaurier. And they all play power forward. All three of those guys play power forward. Now I know that they can mix it up and they can play Carey at center and maybe you can even play Hurt on the wing. But I mean that'll be an interesting thing for me to see what Mike does with those 3 guys. I really legitimately think, along with Trey Jones, those are 3 of his 4 best guys. So that'll be a challenge for him, and then as well trying to elevate the performances of guys like Alex O'Connell and Jack White that I know have ability because I've seen them practice against Marvin Bagley and players like that, and so I've seen what they can do. But they struggled a little bit when they were playing alongside guys like Zion, guys like R.J. Barrett. They struggled to really be who they are as basketball players. Maybe with those guys gone, the personality, whatever, that they, the overwhelming need to like put the ball in their hands because they're more than likely to get it in the bucket. Maybe with this group there'll be less of that, and so those guys will be more comfortable. But in order to be what they want to be, I think those guys have to have good years. I mean, they have to put up. They don't have to be 20-point scorers or whatever, but they have to be effective. They have to shoot good numbers. They have to take quality shots, and they have to guard their positions. And I think all of those things are elements that they didn't quite accomplish a year ago.
In addition to the Blue Devils, Dave referenced that ACC media poll from a few days ago. You also had North Carolina, Louisville, and Virginia receiving first-place votes and expected to be the primary challengers for Duke. So give us a thumbnail sketch of each of those clubs.
Yeah, Virginia, I just was looking at them in working on our preseason top 25, and I mean, they bring back 3 high-level contributors to the championship team. Braxton Key, a little bit less than Kihei Clark and Mamadou Dakite. But all 3 of those guys were important players a year ago, and they don't bring back much else. And they have some nice recruits, but they don't have guys like Wiseman and Hurt and players like that. And yet, how dare any of us doubt Tony Bennett at this point? I mean, they've averaged 30 wins a year over the last 6 years. And I think they've got good players. I don't know if they have enough of them, but until they fail, I'm going to expect them to be great. They've had 1 year in the last 6 that wasn't fantastic. So I'm going to expect at least an excellent to very good year, and then I'll be surprised if it doesn't happen. Carolina, they've had some injury problems, a little bit of a concern there. They lost a lot of wing scoring. I mean, they lost, multiple guys to the first round of the NBA draft, plus Kobe White, who, although he was not a wing player, scored an attack like a wing, just had the ball in his hands all the time. They replaced Kobe with a player who's even probably more gifted in Cole Anthony, but they don't necessarily replace the wings at the same level. So I worry a little bit about that. They're going to have to show that guys like Leaky Black are going to have good years. Brandon Robinson is going to have to make a significant step forward, and then the bigs got to get healthy. So I don't ever expect, again, somewhat similar to Tony Bennett. I don't ever expect the Roy Williams team to not be significant, but they're going to have to find the ability to make shots that they had a year ago when they were so good on offense. And then the other team you mentioned was, I'm forgetting the third team that you asked me to. Louisville. Louisville was the other team, yes. And Louisville, a year ago, had so much improvement from Jordan Wara, a player that I really liked as a freshman, and made the leap towards stardom, maybe even ahead of what I expected him to do. I knew he was going to be an excellent college player at some point. That happened a year ago, and now he can make the leap perhaps to dominant college player. They've got a great core of role players like Dwayne Sutton. Stephen Enoch, their big guy. But what I wonder about with them is point guard. And they were not great at that position with the transfer Cunningham last year. This year they bring another grad transfer in, this one from St. Joseph's. And I I don't know if I love his game yet, but I love his name. His name is Fresh Kimball. I thought he was a very talented player at St. Joseph's, maybe a little erratic at times. We've seen over the years Chris Mack do a wonderful job with guards. He's had excellent guards all through his time at Xavier, and now he gets a guy, he doesn't have a lot of time with him, but he gets a guy who has real ability but not great discipline with his game, and that he has to be more of a distributor than he's been. Maybe part of it in the past was that he didn't play at St. Joe's with the kind of guys he will now, with guys like Warren, Sutton, and Enoch, Ryan McMahon, the terrific shooter. So maybe now he'll be a little bit more oriented toward running the team while still maintaining the ability to attack.
Mike, as far as one of the teams that comes to mind is a disappointment on Tobacco Road has certainly been Wake Forest. Danny Manning, his dad, originally from Greensburg, Danny the Miracles, 1988 winning with Kansas. Everybody thought he's done a nice job at Tulsa. He's going to come home to Wake Forest. And the Wake Forest fans I've talked to are really upset, and they told me the reason why he really hasn't been let go is because they really couldn't afford to, I guess, buy him out and move on to another thing. Have you heard that, or how do you feel about Wake Forest this year?
Well, I think I wrote a long time ago, almost 20 years ago, that when Wake Forest voted for expansion. This was the original expansion, the Miami expansion, the Virginia Tech expansion, Boston College. I thought that Wake Forest voted for itself to have a much tougher job. And although, Skip Prosser, during his period as head coach, did a really terrific work and was able to have a great success and then some really terrific recruiting success as well. Obviously, his passing changed the way the program proceeded. If Skip were still with us, I think Wake would still be a power. But moving through the coaches that they have, it just hasn't been able to click. And they made some bad coaching decisions. Hiring Jeff Bezdelik was a poor decision. It lacked foresight and understanding. It was not a good decision, and I think it set them back. And I really like Danny, and Danny prepared well to be a head coach, but then he took on a job that maybe was a little more difficult than he anticipated it to be. And they've had trouble with player retention. They've had trouble with recruiting, and they've also had trouble with competition. I mean, the ACC has since again subsequently added programs like Louisville that have only increased the competition, and Virginia has completely revolutionized their program with Tony Bennett. And I really like Danny, and I think he's a fine coach, but I understand the frustration. It hasn't clicked there, but I'm not sure what the answer is, because if you look around, the waters are only getting deeper. I mean, NC State with Kevin Keatts is going to get better. I mean, Clemson has gotten better. They've become, under Brad Brownell, a more consistent contributor and a tougher out. Competitor, not contributor. So it's gotten tougher for Wake even than it was when I wrote that 15 years ago. I don't know what the answer is at Wake. It's a tougher job than maybe its fans understand it to be.
Mike, like you referenced early in the interview, you do work as a studio analyst for the Big Ten Network. So I know Michigan State's expected to be right there. A lot of people, or some people at least, have them as number one. So talk a little bit about the Spartans, and then also anyone else there in the Big Ten that folks need to keep an eye on.
My history with picking the Spartans number one is not great. Basically I hit a home run and then 2 strikeouts. In 1999-2000, we picked them at Sporting News College Yearbook back when we had the yearbook as our number one team, and they won it. And then we did it again twice more. I believe it was 2006 and 2011 seasons. And each of those 2 teams lost double-digit games and lost in the first round of the tournament. So I tried really hard to find somebody other than Michigan State to pick number one this year. But there just isn't anybody else. I mean, they have so much ability if everybody is together and healthy. Right now, Joshua Langford is only back now about a month into practice. Haven't heard anything other than good reports about his performances in practice, but he's got to show that he was the player that he was when he left injured back last December or early January. They've got Cassius Winston, first team All-America point guard. Xavier Tillman, a terrific, versatile, defensive-based power forward center. They've recruited excellent players. They've got Aaron Henry, who's an elite athlete with a chance to be an NBA first-round pick, who had a fine freshman season and I think is going to have a monster sophomore year. There's all kinds of ability and depth there, and one of the great coaches in the game. They're better positioned to win it all than anybody. And so, and they also, I think there's an advantage to them in that they'll be challenged enough to keep interested and engaged in the Big Ten, but I don't think there's anybody that's really close to them. Ohio State's very good. Maryland's very good. But there's no other Titan to look them in the eye. So I think by the time they get to March, I think they'll be in pretty good shape for a 1 seed. They'll have played a very, very difficult non-conference schedule. But I think there'll be enough separation between them and their competition in the league that they'll be a pretty clear number one seed and probably located where they want to be.
Mike, I had a question regarding one of the teams that just baffles me. I don't know if it's the Bobby Knight curse or whatever, and you're in that neck of the woods, not obviously in the same town, but in the state. How do the Indiana Hoosiers, that program, how do they get back to? I know it's a different day, a different era, but how do they get back to being one of the national powers?
Well, I think the way that Archie Miller and his staff have approached this is the correct way, which is to build by recruiting the great talent that is grown here in Indiana. They even say that as a state, as a slogan. I think it's the Pacers who adopted the slogan. They say, "We grow basketball here," and it's true. I mean, if you look around at the top 100 in any given year, there are usually a number of players from Indiana that are listed in there. Kyle Guy, who won a national championship last year, was an Indiana kid that left. Chris Wilkes, who was on UCLA's team and went to the NBA draft last year, was from Indiana. There are guys at Xavier from here. There are players all over the place. And Gary Harris, who's doing so great with the Nuggets now. And there have been a number of players from here that have not gone here, so to speak. And so Archie Miller looked at the landscape when he was hired, and I think he understood the first thing he needs to do is to get them back into the recruiting game in state. And over the last 2 years, he's signed the number one player in the state. He signed Romeo Langford 2 years ago, and Romeo had a fine freshman year, was injured a little bit, and it all didn't quite work out, but he was there. And then this year they added Trace Jackson Davis, who's a top 15 freshman, versatile forward who can really pass and can score. Not a great shooter yet, but really knows how to play the game. And they've continued to address that, and that's how they get back. And now the problem that they face is that like everybody wants Indiana to be 1976 good yesterday, and it doesn't happen like that. And I even saw one of my colleagues start to put him on the hot seat. I hate that stuff. I hate the hot seat thing. I will never, as long as I have the authority to say no, I'll never do a hot seat list. It boggles my mind. Archie Miller doesn't belong on anybody's hot seat. He belongs in a list of people that need to continue to progress. And what that progress looks like is going to be seen as much on November 15th as on March 15th. They've got to continue to get really good players, especially from Indiana, but also elsewhere, into their program. And as that continues, they'll be Indiana again. But it's not going to happen in 3 years. It's just that the program was not in that circumstance for him to be able to do that.
Now, Mike, in addition to the ACC programs we talked about or Michigan State, who are some of the other programs you like to contend to cut down the nets, in Atlanta in April of 2020?
Well, Kentucky is going to be very good, and in part because they aren't entirely reliant on their freshmen. They have some that will be important contributors, but they brought back Ashton Hagans, their point guard. They brought back E.J. Montgomery, their power forward, who was not a regular was not a starter, I should say, a year ago, but has a lot of ability. They brought in a grad transfer from McNeill to deepen their front court, Nate Sestina. They have Nick Richards at center, a really gifted guy who just needs to become a consistent one of those guys that just chews nails. He's not that guy now. He doesn't play with that kind of aggression and confidence, but if he does, he's a shot blocking machine. And I think they've continued to try to work at that, and the fact he's still there shows that he's committed to try to become that kind of player. And hopefully for Kentucky's sake and for his sake, I really like him as a kid. He'll develop into that kind of guy and become a pro. They've been very successful at turning guys into pros at Kentucky, obviously, and it's not just guys who are pros when they walk in the door. they make them better there. I think Kansas is going to be an interesting team because they brought back their point guard Devon Dotson, who had a really fine freshman year, and they get back Udoka Azubuike, the center, really physically powerful, overwhelming guy. But a year ago, I think it was a hand or wrist injury he had that ended his season after less than a month, and so he'll be back this year. They're very deep. They have a lot of ability. And, there's a lot going on around Kansas's program. They're going to have to avoid and ignore some distractions that are going to continue as the NCAA pokes their way through there. But I expect that nothing will be concluded in regards to the NCAA within this season. So I think that they'll be eligible for March and a contender when we get there. And then the other team I think to look out for is Florida. Florida got Nate Blackshear from Virginia Tech, who was so good for the Hokies last year, and nearly got them past Duke and into the Elite Eight. And now you're talking about Florida adding to a good core of players who had a nice NCAA tournament performance last year, got to the second round. We're fortunate to be included now. I think they were 19 and 14, 18 and 14 going into the show. But they played well once they were there, made a nice accounting of themselves in their loss to Michigan in the second round. And then I've added significant talent, Blackshear being the most obvious example of that. I think that with Andrew Nembhard at point guard, a guy I really believe has a chance to be very special, I think that's a team that will be contending for the SEC title and will be around late in March.
Now, Mike, some teams that aren't necessarily expected to contend for a title but are very talented and can make nice runs come March. And that's what you have clubs like Utah State, St. Mary's, Xavier, VCU, Davidson, to name a few. And that Davidson club is one that I had the opportunity to see play in person probably 5 or 6 times a season ago, and they're an awful lot of fun to watch with the likes of John Axel Goodmanson and Kellen Grady. So talk about some of those clubs.
Well, I really liked Grady as a freshman. I think he was when they made the show 2 years ago. I thought he had great potential. Maybe he was a sophomore there. I'm not 100% sure, but a guy that I thought then had a chance to become a special player, and he's certainly playing for the right coach. I have as much respect for the coaching there for Bob McKillop as anybody in America. I really do, and you can ask Bob because I was a Bob McKillop guy even before the Stephen Curry miracle. I visited with them probably back in 2004 or so, 2005. Spent a little time with them, and he was really generous with his time in talking for a story that I was doing about North Carolina, and he just a magnificent coach. And so they will always outperform the level of their talent, and he's done a really nice job. And one disagreement he and I had when they went to the Atlantic 10, I said I wrote at the time that I thought it was a mistake, that I liked Davidson's operation the way it was, but I never doubted Bob's ability to transform Davidson into an Atlantic 10 program. He's done a magnificent job at that.
Mike, you've been very generous with your time. We certainly appreciate it. Dave, did you have anything else?
No, Mike, I appreciate you coming on. It's a huge honor to have you on our podcast each time, and that I'm happy to hear your voice. That means that basketball season is just around the corner.
All right. Well, you guys have a great season, and if you need me again, you know how to reach me. And I hope everyone who's listening has a wonderful college basketball season. It should be a fun one.
Thank you very much, Mike. Great job as always. And Kyle, we know how much I love basketball. We didn't realize how long we talked to him, but he's such a great sport and loves to talk about the game, and just love he's so knowledgeable about all the sports, but obviously college basketball is his number one, and we love having him on each and every basketball season.
Yeah, no, it's just around the corner. I mean, we're gonna tip off. I'm not sure when.
November 5th.
November 5th. Is that our first game or the first game of all of the season?
All across the board. We have a game against BMI.
There used to be some earlier games like coaches versus cancer or a.
That's the very first night.
Okay.
It's going to be the Champions Classic or whatever it is.
All right. So there used to always be it seems like a couple teams would play early, like on a battleship or something. I don't know.
They do that sometimes, but I know what you're talking about. But they're doing that, and we have the November 5th game against BMI at home, and then the Navy game that'll be like a Tuesday night, and then Friday night on the road. That game against Navy is going to be really cool. I wish we were closer to Annapolis where we could go, but that's going to be a great game. You have the Bahamas that showcase. The Wichita State will be the first game on for the American for us in conference play, and then you got the first one for us. I mean, there's a lot of great things coming up for us in basketball, and I'm just tickled that Joe Dooley is there, and with all the excitement with him and the coaches. I tell you what, like you said it a couple times, and I've added to it. But if we can keep this coaching staff together for, say, a handful of years, what we have right now, you're going to see the Pirates. We'll be disappointed to be in the NIT. I'll just put it like that. That's my opinion.
I don't know. I don't know that East Carolina basketball will ever get to the point where we're disappointed to be in the NIT. But
I do, because I think that Joe Dooley is going to have it where we make it to the tournament. So that's my point, is that right now the CBI NIT will be excited about, but eventually we'll be doing postseason play every single year, and we'll be disappointed if we don't make it to the NCAA. I'm not saying that I'll be disappointed now for the CBI or the NIT. I'm just saying that eventually it'll be, with Dooley here, it'll be where it's a common that we're going to go to some postseason play and hopefully to the big dance.
Yeah, I hope it gets to that point. I really do. It's been so long in between. It's the CIT run, and even the CIT run's been a couple of years now. It's been so
2013.
long. We've never been to the NIT since I followed it, and last
it's been a while. It may have been since a long. It's been if we have. It's been a long time. And we've
92
only been
or 93, whatever year the NCAA.
Yeah, we've been at 70. We've been twice to the tourney, 72, 93.
Yeah.
And in other words, it's easier. That's one of those things where it's very hard for us to name off all the bowl games, even though we probably know them. We might miss some.
I can do it.
But I know you can. I'm just saying overall that I know you can, but you're not the average person. But for many reasons. But I think that the fact that the basketball, there's been very little success. It's very easy to pull that out. So, do you have anything before we go, my friend?
No, not off the top of my head, man. I'm ready to get football season back rolling Saturday in Orlando.
Yeah, by the way, folks, we'll have our preview out on probably Thursday, definitely early Friday morning at the very latest. Pirates going down to Orlando. And also, by the way, folks, you can hear our press conference, not our press conference, but the weekly press conference from Mike Houston on SoundCloud. We have that up, ready to roll. So,
did we get an update on Penix today?
He looks like he's going to be out. It looks like from what Bubba said, he's going to be out for a while. So thanks to Brendan Shapiro, by the way, for being there. Great teammate, and we appreciate him covering the press conference. We have Deontay Smith for the offense, and then Kendall Futrell for the defense, for the two players representing the players, and for offense and defense. So be sure to listen to that. All right, for Bubba Rosenbaum, and we had our great guest as well, Kim McNeill, head coach of the Lady Pirates, and, of course, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, and Kyle Barber. I'm Dave Richmond for the Sports Objective Podcast.
You've been listening to the Sports Objective Podcast. Join us next time as the guys will be objective, and the objective is sports.